Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam class ki jai. Shri Sukha Uvacha. Shri Sukadev Goswami said. Go of the cows. Vipra of the Brahmanas. Sura of the demigods. Sadhunam and of the devotees. Chandasam api, even of the Vedic literature. Cha and Ishvara, the supreme controller. Raksham, the protection. Ichan, desiring. Tanu date, accepts the forms of incarnations. Dharmasya, of the principles of religion. Arhasya, of the principles of the purpose of life. Cha, and Eva, indeed. He, certainly. Translation. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, O king, for the sake of protecting the cows, Brahmanas, demigods, devotees, the Vedic literature, religious principles, and principles to fulfill the purpose of life, the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts the forms of incarnations. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead generally appears in various types of incarnations to give protection to the cows and Brahmanas. The Lord is described as Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha. In other words, he is always eager to benefit the cows and Brahmanas. When Lord Krishna appeared, he purposefully became a cowherd boy and showed personally how to give protection to the cows and calves. Similarly, he showed respect to Sudama Vipra, a real Brahmana. From the Lord's personal activities, human society should learn how to give protection specifically to the Brahmins and cows. Then, the protection of religious principles, fulfillment of the aim of life, and protection of Vedic knowledge can be achieved. Without protection of cows, Brahminical culture cannot be maintained. And without Brahminical culture, the aim of life cannot be fulfilled. The Lord, therefore, is described as Go Brahmana Hitaya, because his incarnation is only for the protection of the cows and Brahmanas. Unfortunately, because in Kali Yuga, there is no protection of the cows in Brahminical culture, everything is in a precarious position. If human society wants to be exalted, the leaders of society must follow the instructions of Bhagavad Gita and give protection to the cows, the Brahmins, and Brahminical culture. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurabani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavani Paschatya Deshatarine. So, before I start, I want to pass this around. It has a very nice verse. That is yours. No, that is yours. That's for you. But, Balaji, can you give this to Mataji and we can start reading and passing around. So, we are so extremely fortunate to have this opportunity in this life to wake up early, come to the morning program, and discuss these pastimes, these wonderful pastimes that Lord Krishna has revealed to us. So there's a couple of specific words I would like to point out. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada has said, when Lord Krishna appeared, he purposefully, he did this on purpose. It's not an accident, it's not a quirk, but Krishna purposefully took birth in the family. He became a cowherd boy. He took birth in the family of cowherds. Now this is God. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why take birth? Why appear in the family of cowherds? What is the significance? So Krishna did this on purpose. And he personally showed us how to take care of cows and calves. So this was 500 years ago? 5,000 years ago? It's within the near past in universal time. But Krishna did this on purpose. And he showed us personally how to take care of the cows and calves. So, this is for our blessing. And Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he gave us an instruction. He said, when you are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, read Canto 1, Chapter 1, text number 1, and then text number 2, text number 3. He said, don't jump over into the 10th canto. But then very shortly after that, what did he do? He gave us Krishna book. So we could see these pastimes of Lord Krishna as a cowherd boy. See, like these hurricanes and big storms, I was having some realization of what the residents of Vrindavan were going through when Lord Indra came and he instructed the clouds and the wind to completely destroy Vrindavan because they have taken away his puja. So that is like these big hurricanes. We were realizing that, you know, the wind is so severe, the rain is so severe, but we're given the opportunity to remember this Govardhan Puja and how Krishna, little boy, he lifted up Govardhan Hill. And the residents of Vrindavan, they came and they took shelter under Govardhan Hill at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Not only the human residents, but the cows and everybody else who could fit under. So this was, these big storms are like that for us, to take shelter more and more at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So Krishna purposefully came to show us how to take care of the cows and calves. So we can follow in his footsteps. We're here at New Talavan, farm community. It's been here for many years. So it is a very beautiful farm, and they are showing by example how to take care of the cows and calves. Mother Jayanti, Narayan Prabhu, Bhakta Scott, and any of you who would like to help them in this service, it would be most graciously accepted. And in doing that, you will have the opportunity to have this realization of what Krishna did, how he took care of the cows and calves. So don't forget, Krishna did this on purpose. It's not a mistake, it's for our benefit. And Lord Krishna personally showed great respect for his Sudama Vipra. So we are learning, Prabhupada has given us this process, 9 different steps of devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, like this. How to cleanse our hearts so that we can become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Right now, I can only speak for myself. My heart is full of lust and greed and enviousness and anger and false pride and infatuation with all the objects of the senses. But because Srila Prabhupada has given us this medicine, this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the great chanting for deliverance, that we are able to work on cleansing our hearts so that we can actually become eligible candidates to go back home, back to Godhead. There's a verse that we have been privileged to receive. It's one of Lord Chaitanya's verses. Trinadapi Suni Chena is how it starts. And it is the qualification in order for us to chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. If we want to chant the holy names of the Lord constantly, which is the medicine that we need to take to purify our hearts, we must become humbler. Who knows the verse?
Like the grass, which feel oneself like the grass.
Humbler than the blade of grass, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. We can see in the material world the false ego of these politicians, which are usually politicians have huge false egos, but now currently the false egos of the so-called leaders of the planet is an example for us to completely stay away from. So we're here. Prabhupada also, there was an article that Srila Prabhupada wrote many years ago. And it was entitled, it was about Gita Nagari. He had this vision for Gita Nagari. And he envisioned it as a hospital of the heart, where the patients, the devotees who came and took shelter in this hospital of the heart, their medicine was the chanting of the holy name and doing service in a humble mood. And in this way, they could become eligible. See, we're all in the hospital, every single one of us. So, as we get better, it's very joyous to see the devotees becoming free from lust and greed and enviousness and anger, false pride, infatuation with the objects of the senses, becoming more and more free from these diseases of the heart, and replacing these diseases with transcendental qualities. So in this way, Sudama Vipra was shown great respect by the Lord. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, from the Lord's personal activities, human society should learn how to give protection, specifically to the Brahmins and cows. So, New Talavan is also a hospital of the heart. All of the temples are heart hospitals. But here we are being given the specific service of protecting the cows. This is the pillar of the farm communities, to protect the cows. So Prabhupada said, from the Lord's personal activities, human society should learn how to give protection specifically to the Brahmins and cows. And then the next word he says, then. So these things have to be in place. Protection of the cows and the Brahmins. And then Prabhupada says, then the protection of religious principles, fulfillment of the aim of life, and protection of Vedic knowledge can be achieved. Prabhupada says, then, when these are in place, these other things can be achieved. So it's like when you build a house, you don't build the walls and roof first. You need to have the foundation. Then you can build the walls, the house, and finish the inside. So that foundation, as we are patients in the hospital and we take the medicine, the heart becomes clearer and clearer. And we become more engaged in these activities, specifically cow protection and respect for the Brahmins and Brahminical culture. Then these other things will fall into place. Then the protection of religious principles, fulfillment of the aim of life, and protection of Vedic knowledge can be achieved. So these are prerequisites. And then Prabhupada said, without protection of cows, Brahminical culture cannot be maintained. And without Brahminical culture, the aim of life cannot be fulfilled. Prabhupada goes step by step how we do it, or how he says it needs to be done. You see. So you've all seen the verse that I passed around? Can you read the verse?
When the astrologer was speaking, that's one.
Yes.
When the astrologer was speaking so highly of him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped him and began to smile. My dear sir, he said, I think you do not know very clearly what I was. For I knew that in my previous birth, I was a cowherd boy. In my first birth, I was born in the family of cowherd men. And I gave protection to the calves and cows. Because of such pious activity, I have now become the son of a Brahmana. From the, I believe, chapter 17, verses 110 and 111.
So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking.
Yeah.
In my previous birth, I was a cowherd boy. You see, I had some very disturbing experiences when I was in India one time. And I went to the temple president in Vrindavan, and I was traveling as the ISKCON Minister of Cow Protection and Agricultural Development. And I asked him, because they were not working any of the bulls. They had over 300 animals, cows and bulls, and they weren't working any of the bulls. And so I asked him, how come? And he said, well, the brahmacharis they don't want. And many of the brahmacharis were from the villages. So they had kind of grown up with cows. And I said, so? What's the problem? That means that they already know a little something about the cows. He said that they consider it as 10th class service. And I said, really? He said, yes, because they were in the village and now they've come to the temple and they have nice prasadam and cloth and they can go out and distribute books and they see it as prestigious, whereas, you know, taking care of the cows was not so prestigious, cleaning up the dung and like that. So I asked him, I said, so when they go to the temple for Mangalarti and they stand in front of Krishna Balaram, what are they thinking? If they're saying, taking care of the cows and calves and working the bulls is 10th class, that their God is 10th class? I was quite disturbed. And then, from Vrindavan, I went to Mayapur, and I spoke with the same thing. The bulls were not being engaged in service. So I asked the temple president, I said, how come? You know, you have so many brahmacharis. How come? You know, and other devotees were complaining also, especially during Bhagavatam class. They were going around with this very loud motorized contraption to pick up the garbage around the community. And it's heard in Bhagavatam class. And people were saying, how come the bulls aren't, you know, being given this service? You know, they're very quiet. The temple president told me the same thing. He said that the brahmacharis think that it is 10th class service to work with the bulls. I was amazed. I was amazed. So this perception is slowly changing, very slowly changing. But we have the opportunity here in New Talavan, in Vrindavan, Girinagri. There's other family farms who have bulls that are becoming interested in working with the bulls. But it's part of our legacy to train the bulls, to show the example, especially, you know, for people who are not, you know, regular devotees in ISKCON, so that they can see, wow, the bulls have more value alive than dead. They have service. It's not that they're just eating and sleeping. So Krishna showed by his personal example how to take care of the cows and calves. So we have that legacy to step into. And again, each day I've said it is such a wonderful experience to work with the bulls. It'll change your life. You'll see. It's like chanting the Hare Krishna Mantra, the jar of honey. We can know, we can hear that it's nectar. It's very sweet. But when we do it ourselves, when we take that lid off of the jar of honey, jump into the honey and taste the sweetness. Honey is sweet, Nanda? You're a female. So we have these responsibilities. Krishna is showing by example. Without protection of cows, Brahminical culture cannot be maintained, and without Brahminical culture, the aim of life cannot be fulfilled. The Lord is therefore The Lord, therefore, is described as Go Brahmana Hitaya because his incarnation is only for the protection of cows and Brahmins. Unfortunately, because in Kali Yuga, there is no protection of the cows in Brahminical culture, everything is in a precarious position. If human society wants to be exalted, the leaders of society must follow the instructions of Bhagavad Gita and give protection to the cows, the Brahmanas, and Brahminical culture. New Talavan is very important. And we are very fortunate to be here, to associate with each other, to have these festivals, to share realizations. I've learned so much about being here. When I was traveling in these European countries, I learned so much. I was actually embarrassed. Because here in America, we have so much facility. When I was in Belarus the first time in '94, they were doing hay. And one of the men, he had a big, they were loading hay onto the wagons by hand with pitchforks. And these pitchforks were like 12 feet long because they were loading this loose hay up onto the wagons. And there's somebody up there stacking it crisscross, crisscross. So they had these big loads. And there's a certain way to load them so that they wouldn't topple over when they were taken to one place or another. And he had this big pile of hay on his fork, and he was going up, and the handle broke, just snapped. So what did he do?
Get out of the way, it was coming down.
Yeah, that was one thing. But when he got the handle down, and he went into the forest, and he looked for a little sapling which would replace the one that, the handle that had just broken. Now, for me, with my condition here, was, oh, I've got to go to Lowe's, I've got to go to Home Depot and get a new, spend some money, get in the car, waste some time, you know. But he just went into the forest. They actually had very little. Very little. So they were making use of natural resources, which was on their farm property. I was embarrassed. Because I'm thinking, oh, my handle broke, I'm done for the day. Gotta go to town, spend some money, burn some gas. He went into the forest, and he looked for something that Krishna had provided. So, does anybody have any questions, comments, corrections?
Cuba, because of the embargo and how they were for so many decades, I'm not sure how it is now, but unable to get things from the outside, you know, specifically tractor parts, that they started to train oxen, and someone told me that they have 20,000 teams of oxen. That's what they do. And there was a man here a few years ago that said, was from Cuba, and he said that it was against the law to kill a cow or an ox, that they would die of natural death, and then people could eat them. And he said, back in the, you know, remote areas or villages where maybe where it's not being enforced so much, but there was actually a law that you couldn't kill a cow.
There was a time that you're referring to when Cuba and Russia were very closely linked. And part of that camaraderie, Fidel Castro, and maybe it was Khrushchev, or I can't remember who was in charge of Russia at that time. They had a very close relationship based on communism. And something happened, that relationship fell apart, and one of the supplies which was coming very heavily into Cuba from Russia was oil and gasoline. So they were using tractors. You know, they had the oil, they had the gasoline, and when that relationship with Russia broke, they couldn't run their tractors. So, as Mataji was saying, they took to using oxen. And there was a whole article in Life magazine at the time how Cuba had solved the problem of very little oil and diesel and gasoline by turning to the oxen. And they had, like Mataji was saying, thousands of teams of oxen. And that's how they pulled it together agriculturally. So we also, we will face that day. It'll come. There's a book called Small is Beautiful. And it was put out by a man by the name of Schumacher, who was considered as a world-class economist. The first 4 or 5 chapters are about fossil fuels. And he's explaining very pointedly, fossil fuels are a non-renewable resource. When they're gone, they're gone. It's not like a tanker's going to come from another planet and give us, like now we're sending tankers into Puerto Rico and these other places to get them back up and running. Tankers full of diesel and gasoline. But when the fossil fuels are finished, they're finished. It's not going to happen in our lifetime, but it will happen. There still is oil exploration, and there's more oil consumption now in India. The population is getting bigger. There's more demand for oil in China, that they have more and more freedom and economics where the people can actually have automobiles. But when this is gone, it's gone. Then the next chapter is about nuclear energy. How it's very powerful. The only problem with, well, it's not the only problem, but one of the biggest problems with nuclear energy is the toxic waste. And they have no idea what to do with it. It's so toxic. They're putting it in caves and burying it deep in the ground, but they don't know how it's going to affect the planet. So it's not really an option. So we see now in different countries where solar energy and wind power are becoming more and more used as clean fuel. Krishna is providing. The wind comes. Sometimes too strong. The sun is there every day. The house that we live in now in Florida, we put 105 solar panels on the roof. And Florida is one of the states that buys back energy. So right now we're paying $23 a month for our electric bill. And that's just the privilege to be hooked up to the grid to what we don't use can go back, and they buy it back from us. So with those 105 panels, it runs everything that we're doing, and we use about 1/3 of what we produce, and the rest goes back into the grid. There is a Buddhist axiom which Schumacher uses in his book. And he says, the success of the village depends on how much comes from outside the village. So, in farm language, we refer to on-farm inputs and off-farm inputs. On-farm inputs means that we are using everything which is available on the farm. We do not have to purchase anything from outside. Off-farm inputs. So if we are purchasing 10% off-farm, then the village is only 90% successful. If we are using 100% 100%, like your cows, for example. You have the manure you can use for fertilizer. You can dry the manure into cow dung patties. You can use it for cooking, like this. You see. The urine for medicine. So many applications. So we would like to see Krishna's farms as 100% successful on farm. Nothing coming from the outside. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. But that's the goal. Yes, Prabhu.
Having traveled extensively as you have, and would you care to characterize the apparent connection and relation of protection of cows in Brahminical culture and the success in the places where you've traveled and seen our, farms in that area? How would you care to characterize Krishna consciousness in general? And it can be very dynamic. In some places it's holding on. In some places it's very dynamic. I've traveled in different places in India particularly. You could see that could we characterize the Malays in different places for lack of these important foundational elements?
Within ISKCON, there's a big need to bring cow protection to the forefront. The first class I gave here a couple of days ago, 117.3, because that verse is Prabhupada is talking about the benefits of milk. And he keeps using the term for deriving religious principles. One sentence in that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that householders should keep cows and bulls as household paraphernalia, not only for drinking milk, but for deriving religious principles. For deriving religious principles is the hook that we are missing. The talk is milk, 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 milk. Where's the milk? Doesn't matter where it comes from. You can buy it from slaughterhouse. And that's become the norm. Cow protection is not the forefront concern. And when Kurma was still with us, he and I were old friends. And I asked him to take me to different places in Vrindavan and show me, different cow protection situations. And this is, it's going on in ISKCON, it's going on outside of ISKCON. We would go to different temple goshalas, and we would ask to see the bulls. And we would ask, what are you doing with your bulls? I mean, it's almost across the board answer. They're not giving milk. We are using tractors, so we just put them out on the street. And then we went to a couple of places which were just so completely, this one place was so dark, the buildings were so dark, the cows were knee-deep in manure. Their area had, and this was just, they were doing a commercial dairy, but very low standard. So it's Kali Yuga. It's going on even in Vrindavan. So what we really need to do, and it's not to minimize the service of other devotees. The book distributors are 100% needed. The devotees who are working with the children, they're 100% important. Every service for Srila Prabhupada, for Lord Krishna, is important. But we have to, somehow or another, insert cow protection as the pivot point for everything that we do. Cow protection, chanting the holy name, training the children. The children are the future. And if they are not understanding the importance of cow protection and how they fit into the scheme of life that we're trying to develop. Even at Gita Nagari, back in the 80s when we were there, we were trying to get the devotees to use the milk from our cows. See? And we said, we will provide the containers, we will deliver it to you. All you have to do is wash the container, and we will pick up the empty container. He said, oh, but I'm at the market, it's so easy, I'll just put it in the buggy. And these cows in the commercial dairy industry, from the beginning to the end of their life, which is very short, they're abused. Their life is complete hell. How can we break that chain? Oh, but Prabhu, Aganta Sakriti, they get benefit knowingly. Yeah, maybe a small amount. But it's not enough benefit for us to continue with that commercial dairy scheme, which Prabhupada says in that verse also, 117.3. These greatly sinful acts are responsible for all the problems in present society. Taking the calves away as soon as possible, which he says cannot be discussed in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Sudra milkman comes and he takes the milk. The cow's not giving. She's being robbed of her milk. And when she has no milk, she is sent to be slaughtered. And then he says, these greatly sinful acts are responsible for all the problems in present society. Do we want to continue supporting that? Or do we want to show real cow protection? Taking care of cows with love and devotion as they represent Bhumi, Mother Earth, and Dharma, the principles of religion. So we have a big challenge in front of us. And it's difficult because when we have a cow, we're looking at a 15 to 20 year lifespan. Right now, our oldest cow is 25 years old. And she's showing no signs of slowing down. She's one of the bosses. She's one of the bosses in the herd. When she comes towards the other cows, it's like the Red Sea parting. It's kind of like a Christian phenomenon. When she comes, she's 25 years old. But she's the boss. Yeah, they move. So,
they respect their elders?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
It's a very mode of goodness program that they have. Anyway, you have another question?
Offline question better.
Okay. So we need to, what I have found in traveling is that many devotees in these countries, they would come to me and say, we would like to do this. And I told them all, in all these countries that these families, it wasn't just the men coming, families were coming. I said, just do it yourself. Develop villages. It's not an institutional thing. Prabhupada said, householders should keep cows and bulls as household paraphernalia, not just for drinking milk, but for deriving religious principles. Householders, that means village. It doesn't mean central temple. So the householders, every country's going to be different because of the economics. Ukraine, now they're able to buy land very cheap because of the war. A lot of devotees have moved out of these war zones, out into the countryside, out into the villages. You can get a house very cheap, some land, very cheap. So they're doing that. They're doing that. The war is pushing them. So don't wait. And what's going to happen is, when you develop these villages, your temple presidents, your GDCs, they will be very grateful because you have taken the initiative to get up and do it. Like in the early days. We were sent out, we were given some training, and then we were sent out to open preaching centers. Okay. We'll be here for all of the morning, up until the Sunday feast. We'll be here. So if you have questions, come by the booth.
Okay.
And but we're running late. Okay, thank you very much. All blessings for the Prabhupada.